Hi, everybody. I think people are still coming in, so we'll just wait for a couple more moments. I hope everybody's doing well. And having a good evening wherever you are. So we'll just begin. There was a question. I'm not really sure I answered this before, but it is a question that goes along with the second question, roughly. And I think I may have touched on both of these questions, but I'd just like to review them a little bit. This was Rosemary Menard. It's a question from Toronto. Last night, or previous night, you said that you think our lives are metaphorical and symbolic of the stories we tell ourselves. I was wondering if you could speak more about that. Also, a few weeks ago, you talked about broadening our relationship with service. I was wondering if you could elaborate on that as well. In addition to meditating, using the tools, working with ourselves, and being receptive to whatever comes into our system, are there other ways to broaden this relationship? I'll just say this, and I would like to say that being receptive to whatever comes into our system is not meant to be exactly that way. It's being perceptive of whatever comes into our ability to notice. Ultimately, we have to be cautious about what we accept in relationship to what we perceive internally. And this is, might as well start that off and trying to just understand how I would actually say that in a way that doesn't have too many reactions. With respect to metaphysical or metaphorical and symbolic relationships with stories we tell, if we can understand that we often express ourselves in a way that is kind of kind of alignment with how we like to see ourselves, as well as learning how to be honest with the hearing of the stories we tell. And trying to relate to them honestly with, let's say, a recognition of this is how we function in life. We talk in certain ways, we engage in certain ways, we use intensity in certain ways, we use expressions of a certain kind. And those expressions are, in a kind of way, defending the symbolic images that we've created inside, often without our knowing. The more vulnerable we feel internally, the more we will defend those images. And that is really something that happens to every one of us. We are human beings, and that's what we do. In my opinion, when you're looking to clarify your relationship with you about you and how you function, because in doing that, you're checking on how you have vulnerability around credibility, you have vulnerability around just being you, and how you maintain that you image or metaphor, because it's a metaphorical and a symbolic image, actually, of the personality style you believe is extremely important for you to maintain. Um, and why would you do such a thing? Well, you do that in normal life just to be comfortable and try to make sense of other people and how they do that. Um, I'm not saying that no one mm, uh, who attempts to be spiritual ever does that, because they do, because that's part of the ritualistic kind of expression that we have within ourselves about living life in a certain kind of a way, because it's valued by us. And there is an ongoing need to be considered valuable in our society and in our personal lives. So this is kind of interesting, because if you look at dreaming, which Diane Ireland's question is about, uh, for example, how does one begin to understand the symbols that are being used in our dreams? Are dreams connected to our inner world of imagination? Are there different levels of dreaming? Uh, and we touched on it very briefly, but when you're looking at these symbolic references, you're basically uh, touching those dreams from deep down inside. Your unconscious relationship, that's a little bit too much there, I think. Right? Your unconscious relationship with yourself is unknown to you because it is unconscious. Uh, and what's going on right there in the dream world is an attempt to allow an individual to perceive that which is playing out in the individual. So they have a dream, and the dream is filled with symbolic references. Well, what would it use? It would use all kinds of things. First of all, it wants to get your attention so you'll be conscious enough to remember your dream. It's very difficult for lots of folks, myself included from time to time, because you have a total awareness of the dream and you're sure, if you can be aware of it, that you will never forget it. And of course, you're in one state of remembrance. And when you come into and wake up in the morning, you may get into a different state of understanding or conscious awareness. You can't remember the dream. Mind you, things can happen in the daytime, which trigger a memory, excuse me. And in that triggering, you suddenly may have a reflexive remembering of a dream. If you did have a pencil or a pen handy and a piece of paper, you could write it down. So why write it down? Well, everything in your dream may be a symbolic image. All your friends, your enemies, I don't care who it is. The dream may be just principally trying to show you aspects of you that you're not able yet to approve of in you. It sounds simple and a little simplistic, but it's amazingly interesting. Every individual may be a metaphor. So I normally say to an individual, if you'd like to find out about your metaphors, your images in your dreams, write them down. If you can, keep a dream diary beside your bed. Some of the old ways I used to do it is to leave the book, a scribbler, worthless scribbler sitting right in my bed, and along with a pen, one of the flick pens, so you don't have to turn on, and just roll over in the middle of the night and try to write something down, and you will find it will be difficult for you to write. But you will think you're writing it down perfectly, and the scrawl that comes out may not be really appreciated by the naked eye. However, images, you may draw kind of an image or write down 2 words, neighbors, this and that, something that will trigger a memory for you. Now, why do that? Well, this may not be what everyone will do, but if you keep dream diaries, you begin to recognize that certain dreams are repetitive, and you didn't know they were repetitive before, or you do and you did know, but you don't understand the symbology. They may be trying to help you engage with something that maybe might help you to understand yourself better. Unfortunately or fortunately, depending on us all as individuals, we may think we know everything about ourselves. And when we express ourselves, we don't even notice sometimes how we are engaging. Emotionally, with intensity, expression in a certain way, with a certain vim and vigor, emphasize the value of what we're saying, all the rest of the stuff that goes along with it. This may be very interesting to the personality's view or to a self-image, but not very helpful when you're relating to people. Or we might want people to believe what we're saying, and certainly if we say it in a certain style, they must believe it. Well, the truth is, whether you say it in any style, people will believe something if they want to, and won't if they don't want to. And you will be the same way. If you could have, and this is one thing that I mentioned before, I'm sitting in front of an individual here, right in front of me. It's like a mirror. And when I'm doing these talks, I talk to that person as if they don't understand what I'm actually trying to say. Or I have to be fairly clear. Well, it becomes clear to me that I don't always speak clearly. I think what I'm saying would be understandable, but it's me listening to me, and sometimes my clarity is not perfect. So then you can always say, well, his clarity wasn't perfect, so therefore I didn't understand what he was saying. Or you can say, I don't want to hear that because it bothers me. Why should I do that if it's going to bother me? And you're absolutely right. This is a dilemma with internal growing. And here's why the dilemma is there. As subtler energy, softer energy moves in, your personality will use that in the style that it believes it needs to express itself in to be valued by itself or by others according to the view of an individual. This happens all the time. It's always the same thing. Every individual has these kinds of things in the back of their mind. They would not necessarily agree that they express themselves like that. But I'm looking at a mirror, and it's very difficult to do that. Unless you're charmed with yourself, and I'm not. one good thing about being, let's say, more inclined to be careful about how you're engaging in life is that you see things that you wish you could do differently. And that's a wish. And that is a hope. Yes, and a desire. Or if you don't see that, you just automatically think you're doing things exactly the way you want to do them. And one of the things that is really interesting about this is that you can watch yourself expressing yourself and not necessarily agree that that's the best way to express it. It's kind of humbling in a way. It's compacted a bit in those images as we express ourselves, but at the same time, we're looking at learning about ourselves. And it's staggering how much you can learn about yourself by allowing yourself to see how you present and engage. Nobody is perfect in it, but it can be very defensive, the way we respond. And when you're looking at service, amazing. If more energy can come into you when you're reluctant to overvalue how you are and recognize that you're learning how to engage with life beyond how you can engage now. And I'm not talking about with people only, I'm talking about with yourself. And you're watching things that you do that you would hope that no one else did back to you, then it is humbling. And learning how to be respectful to you in spite of the fact that you engage reflexively often. And you can test this reflexive business. Listen closely to what you say. See if it came into your head first, or you just spoke it out. And then you might automatically defend that and say, yeah, well, I speak that way because I have a very quick mind and it speaks very clearly and expressively, and it does this and it does that. Maybe, maybe not. It's learning to see those things that you express and wonder about whether they may be valued by you or automatically defended by you. You don't have to agree with what you say. You can say, just a minute, I'm not sure about that. I've done this in many of my lectures, especially when you're on the road. I'll say something, and if I'm listening, I'll notice, I think it's better to say it this way because this way I'm not so sure that I agree with that. People look at you a little weirdly, but you're being honest with yourself. And you're looking to be that way the best you can. And in doing that, you find out that you're not always doing that. Why do that though? Because you shift levels. You go deeper in the watching and you find out And then you find out that you're not really um, looking at what you're saying. And some things you just say comes out because you're really defending what is valuable to you in relationship to the images that you've constructed in your mind throughout your lifetime. And you're trying to just recognize that. You're not trying to negate it or assess it in some way that is any kind of negative. You're just saying, oh my gosh, I saw that. That's interesting. I wonder if I do that more often than I would like to. I wonder if anybody else notices that. And if they do, is it because I've said something or that they're defending something within themselves or they sniff it out somehow and they don't know they do that? We know far more about others than we are aware of. And we judge them more often than they need to be because they're working on things inside themselves where they are that are valuable for them in their process of engaging beyond the perception that they already have. You are doing the same thing. Being okay with that, because it is process, is a very valuable thing. You see the image, you see the story, you see the metaphor. Okay, why do I remember that metaphor better than this one? Wonder why. Not negative, not positive, not good, bad, just for a purpose. Maybe for a purpose related to something else. If it is, recognize that was not about me, that was about a purpose relative to something else. Never thought of it that way before, you could say. Learn. You're learning about you. And you're learning about the connections that are related to others as well as only you. You see, other people consider themselves physically, consider themselves emotionally, consider themselves from a personalized intellectual point of view, a mental point of view. They look at these things in relationship to the images that they construct and engage with and protect in life, fearing that if they don't do that, they will be considered less than. Less than what? Less than the images that you believe are necessary, that we all believe that are necessary to survive in this world relative to our personalizations. Understanding this is not so simple. Hearing it 50 times doesn't mean you do it. 1,000 times, 50,000 times. Commentary on it doesn't mean you do it. Being patient, understanding that learning is process. There's a very interesting feature of this. Try to do something you're not very good at. Don't give up. Keep going for a couple of years on it. And you'll find you're still not very good at it, but you're good enough. But you've had to struggle through continuing so that your skill level can engage more, deeper and deeper. If you don't run out of time on this plane, maybe it could be helpful in the long run, physically, emotionally, or mentally. Change is difficult for us. No disrespect to anybody. It's difficult because we thematically, metaphorically maintain the way we believe we need to maintain ourselves until something else can be, let's say, added into the comfort zone. You know what? A lot of people put this comfort zone down. I am not doing that. Here's what I'm doing. I recognize and consider this yourself. If you can recognize that there are times when you are more comfortable than others, and then, or ways of acting, if you can point them out to yourself, and then slowly try to make an adjustment in that. And you will notice how difficult that is. So, additional learning is very difficult. So, in the old traditions, the old biblical traditions, it's that great statement of, unless you become a child again, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. God, so many times that thing has made people just turn over and just say, oh, this is crazy stuff. But look, you're young, you learn. Your parents are patient with you, or impatient with you, or miserable with you. But you learn a kind of style of engaging by copying, by just trying to do better or trying to do the opposite. But you're looking for recognition of some kind, whether it be good, bad, or indifferent, because you're a child. You get a little older, and many people have said around 13, 14, 15, you start interfering. Well, the basic thing is you're wanting to become an adult and give the orders, and be the boss, and do this and do that. And nobody's going to tell you what to do and what not to do. That's a teenage engagement, relatively speaking. Relatively speaking, in accordance with how much intensity has been thrown at you, how much evaluation, how much importance is given, how much putting you down has occurred, how much you've figured that all out for yourself. Or just are you reacting and acting? And many of us have done exactly that. But as you hitting your 20s and your 30s, you just start to figure something out here. Hey, whoa, just a minute now. I'm an adult, at least physically, I'm an adult. You try to act like an adult emotionally a little bit, because there's a kind of way of acting. You should act like this, you should act like that. And there are a lot of rules about how to do that. And you do that for a little while and you find, well, let me try and think about this. It means you're starting to cultivate something going on inside. Let me think about this. And you do. And you make some shifts and changes, and you leave some other stuff reflexive in your engagement with life. And you hit upon different symbols. You've heard me talk about one part of my life walking in with a suit on. Doesn't have to be new, you just have to like it. Nice tie and a hat. Those old days, I'm a little older. So, and a coat on, and you walk in. People say, oh, nice suit. Oh, well, there you are. You're fluffed up about your suit. Of course, none of you have ever done that. But what can I say? In your early 20s, you're in an emotional and mental state. You still are involved with the need to be considered worth being around somehow in a certain way. Oh, don't worry, you figured out other ways of doing it if you didn't do it that way, because you didn't live at that timeline, the 60s. But you figured out a way to do that. And then you engrave it. There's an engraving. You stitch it deeper. Then you protect that. Or you're lucky enough to be able to get out of that. Because you notice that and you say, my God, what am I doing? Look at I even feel better wearing this different thing or that or the other thing. Old friend of mine used to wear old clothes. That meant he was engaging in a kind of a way where he didn't really care about wearing good things. But he wore these old things like I wore my suit. It doesn't mean he was a bad person. He was he was a good person. But had just a different symbol. Learn that. Learn that that was the way it had to be. Kind of. To be different than someone else who was teaching to do something else. So he decided that he wasn't going to do things that way. None of you are independent. We all are, in our own way. You have this little signature way of engaging. Well, if you don't see it, other people see it. If it's not uncomfortable to you, it may be uncomfortable to others. None of us are perfect in these things. And then you get a little bit looking at this stuff and you begin to be curious. You begin to wonder. You start talking about crazy stuff. What do I want to do when I grow up? You're already grown up. It's okay. These are stages that people go through. It's process. It's life. Every single day, every day is a service day. Depends on to who. What did I learn today? Or what, that was an old adage. Gosh, hardly even like that one. But what is there for me to know about me that I missed yesterday? All your old friends or enemies will tell you, some of them, but they'll tell you them from their point of view, which is jaundiced by the way they are themselves. You learning about you slowly allows you to go deeper. And then you have to learn how to be less harsh on yourself. Because it doesn't help to be harsh. It just doesn't help. Dreams happen all the time in your daytime. And you'll be caught in a dream right in the middle of a daytime. You'll be caught in a scenario. Just a dream. Could be not a very good dream. Could be a good dream. And you'll feel the reflexes, emotional, mental responses. And then suddenly you'll realize, this is so interesting. This is just a second or two. I felt good when I was talking to that person. I don't even know them. A little dream. Is that okay? Absolutely. So what can you learn about that little dream? A simple dream like that would mean you feel good under these kinds of circumstances. And why do you like these others so much that you won't allow them to be something other than what they are? Well, the reason is because you have been copying, you've been training, in training. Now, as an adult, you're beginning new training. Sounds kind of weird talk. Nonetheless, the most wondrous thing you can ever do is allow yourself to notice. And when you're frustrated with what you notice, learn how to be kind to yourself. Respect you. So that's how I've been doing this. It's so difficult to allow that to occur as a reflex, as opposed to an assessment or a judgment of what you think. Might not be the best thing to do in all states of circumstance. Thank goodness we know that there are no perfect people in their relationship with their personalizations. But there are actors and actresses. And in that, none of us applied for the job. We just have trained ourselves for that job. So learning that other people will still respect you as you grow, you begin to understand that it's not always a great thing to tell other people how you are. The need to do that may be camouflaged in vulnerability. And if that is true, then recognize the vulnerability and make friends with it the best you can. Be gentle with yourself and kind and respectful of the fact that you will do the best you can to help you be okay. Now, that okay, once again, relates to a comfort zone image that you have in relationship to how you function in the world. It may not be comfortable, but it may be all you know. I hope this helps a little bit in terms of metaphor and symbolism, and relating to stories that we engage with and tell ourselves. Recognizing that in dreams and in life, in our actual engaging with life, can be very dreamlike and also very comforting from time to time. I would suggest that we just take it in, go slow, be respectful, and ask for help internally. This is what I would suggest, but you be the suggester for you. Because you are the watcher of you in life growing, if you can allow yourself to watch. Don't only look for those things that you believe are better than other people or worse than other people. Get into that mid zone where you can really get to understand and be respectful. Because as you understand you better, you will begin to understand all others in our world who are like you. Because there are many, there's 8 billion people. We have similarities. Shift something within yourself if you believe you need to or want to. Because you have to grow through that little twist and curve within you, by you. No one else is allowed to help you by forcing you to do something. That's a dilemma and also a great, wondrous thing. Yet at the same time, if you're really interested, you will get help in those things. You'll also get help to remain the same if that is your wish. If that is your desire and you've already set it up for you to be an individual who remains as you are and emphasizes various other things that may be, from your point of view, valuable. Because the nature of that higher state is to attempt to help you to be like it, aware and have a compassionate, loving response to what you see, no matter what you see. This goes for some states beyond ours, because there are those who would take a practice view of judgment into other states. And they would use that to slow the process of growth by others, because they don't understand that if they helped in that process, they would be helped themselves to go beyond that vulnerable state that they exist in, relating to judgment. And all of us have pieces of that in us. Just try getting through a day without complaining about something. If you believe that you don't complain, you're in a bedtime story. Your system, physical, emotional, and mental system, cannot do anything other than sense out, perceive, and react in a constructed manner, no negativity, based on how you constructed that personalized version of energetic form called you. That is the nature of our interaction with energy, with others, and our resounding reflex response based on our brain and our nervous system and the energetic component that is there. We see, we hear, we watch, we speak, and we don't speak. And we engage mentally with how we believe things should be. And we are not, sorry about that, perfect in that yet. Look around. You'll see others aren't, because they don't all agree with you. Let that not be your aim. Because if you are growing, you will change your mind about an awful lot of stuff. And many of you have. Be happy with that. The best you possibly can. There's another question here from Janet Holt in the UK. I thought maybe I'd just run by you. She says, we've just finished an interesting European school at Theosophy. She's at Theosophist. Looking at The Voice of the Silence by H.P. Blavatsky. I'm not sure if anybody has read that book. It's very storytelling, metaphorical in relationship to an individual who is growing. Old 19th century language, or 20th century language, really early part, in the 1800s, 19th century. There are some good contemplative pieces. You know, how does it raise that? But it does raise that perennial problem, which we all seem to be asking me about, of how to deal with feeling fearful of all the negativity around as we maybe become more sensitive. It is a dilemma, that's for sure. But it's a dilemma because of our personalizations. We are developed in that way so that we can nurture a movement in our landscape, our life, through a maze of how others deal with life, utilizing some of that and not utilizing some of it, making our own minds up, sometimes very well and sometimes not so well. But nonetheless, doing what we can do. Every comfort area, I said, provokes a tendency to be concerned about change. With an eyeglass on self, and I'm having increases our perception. If you take a look at you, you start increasing your perception. It's a dilemma. You even start to see past personalities zones, and that is very, really, really helpful because you get an idea of how you've had to construct the form you already have. As well, you become, because there's a kind of tendency to trust you, that you will be attentive to energies coming in because you're practicing that. Your personality is nothing but energy. So you are practicing seeing how you've set up that energetic form. So that means your energetic attention will be focused there as well. And she's talking about some tools also that we use. It would be great if you could recap on some of the advice you have for keeping positive and for banishing that fear. This is very, very interesting. I also said when I was talking about there's no banishment, but you can keep relatively positive by continuance, moving in a direction that where you're trying to broaden out an understanding of things that you already have set tightly and invoked a certain kind of declaration within you without even knowing you have, that things have to be this way or that way or the other. So she's talking about as your perception increases, you'll notice a kind of imposition of ideas, sensations of maybe others, things going through your mind. And I've had talked about if you're not from the highest and best, you're not welcome in my system. Another thing I talked about, that you use the life map on a response that you have, because it may be relative to an old response, but others may stimulate that response in you, so you're deterred from trying to think that you're really equipped to grow. I've seen this happen before. Unfortunately, not noticed too easily. Hope you heard that. Not noticed too easily. And there will be people who would try and get you to react because that proves that that they're much more able, and your reacting is all on you and not their fault at all. And they are more superior. All that means with another is that they're more vulnerable than they know. And they don't really understand. By doing that, they're making themselves more vulnerable to the very thing that they're trying to do to others. It's the strangest kind of thing. In other words, You become more defensive around yourself. And anybody around you that engages with you, unless they see you as superior, and then you're not defensive, you lap it in because it is really valuable. Well, guess who doesn't like being congratulated as a good person? Nobody. It's not always believed by everybody, but nonetheless, it's there. And we need some reassurance from time to time. I mean, we as personalities on our plane. Try that out for yourself. See if that's true. Believe me. Then we begin to realize that energy is everywhere. And it makes us nervous to grow. But then we begin to realize that if you've been around for a while in this kind of stuff, that our focus is on doing things that make us important. Yeah, that's true. Happens to everybody. So in her particular engagement, the voice of the silence is very, very interesting because we have internal voices that value how we are. And we can hear them and they play well. And they play with us well with us, not with others. And then, as part of our personalized version of in our internal selves, often the focus will be on our value because that is the thing that touches us if we are vulnerable. So our defenses get stronger. From another level, it's a very easy thing to get people not to grow. Increase their own self-importance. You won't even consider taking a look to see anything that may not be helpful to you, but also may not be helpful to others. You get to the point where you only want people to do you and your way of thinking, and not anybody else's. Here's a great, really big deal. There is tremendous diversity on our planet. I am talking about human beings, but I'm also talking about other animals and plants and all the rest of it. Reading a book by Attenborough, so that has to come in there somewhere. But when you're dealing with diversity, it means the little small piece that is called you doesn't understand how others are because it resents shifting and changing anything in you because that's the way you are growing. Your defenses are strong, your judgment is strong, your fear is strong, and you live in a virtual reality. But so does 8 billion other people. Like that idea or not, we're faced with it. And we will not allow ourselves to see it if it means changing something we don't want to change. So the question comes up, can a person grow who is highly defensive about how they function? My answer to that is yes. Everyone grows. They grow through them. Remember, that higher state wants that individual to be like it. So it helps in the exaggeration of how a person is so that the individual can see it. No guarantee that's going to happen. We have that things have happened in lives, in history, that's shown us where certain individuals could not even see how they were functioning. And even if they did, they thought it was the right thing to do. It's still happening in her. It's disinterest in other people, except if they agree with them. There's an interest. Kind of sad. But it's the realities that are a part of an engaging, growing species. And that's us. I hope we have the capability of surviving this one. I really do. Because there is such a wondrous engagement with higher states that can be had by anyone. But we go through our early learning processes, which means getting through this business of being really important because you can do this or that or some other thing. It has nothing to do with higher state engagement. It has to do with the constructed system of this equals spiritual growth, and it should be only this way, and that's the way it is. This is a tough one for us. Once again, take a look around. You'll see it everywhere. You'll see it in yourself. Hopefully. Because it's there, even if it's a tiny little thing. Because it's linked to our species. And we can actually soften it down. But we have to be willing to do that. And each individual engages with that. There are other levels, higher levels than ours, that have not been able to do that. And there have been higher levels who have been able to do that. Meaning this, individuals who have some awareness, but only have an interest in being valued personally. None of us are exempt from this one. I don't care what you think about yourself. So find out where that is. Do the best you can with it. You'll get help with that if you really want it. If you don't want it, you can't fool those higher states. It's not possible. We're as permeable. We're visible. None of us are spot on perfect. Do what you can. And let others do what they can. And be respectful of others and their growing. That will be a part of engaging with the true voice of the silence, which is a voice that is beyond the personalized versions of an engagement with a personality constructed from the bottom up on these planes, and I mean that. I wish everybody wondrous growth. Please take care of yourself. We are now going to meditate. Bye for now. Now we'll just begin to do the bouncing and grounding. And good night, everybody. I wish you well.